सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांति। ओम श्री गणेशाय नमः। ओम श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवं परमानन्दमाधवं। सर्ववेदान्तसिद्धान्त गोचरं तमगोचरं गोविन्दं परमानन्दं सद्गुरुं प्रणतोऽस्म्यहम्। So after explaining all the 5 sheets, Panchakosha, separately, and also pointing out how the self is different from each of the koshas, the Guru, Bhagavan Shankaracharya ji, here summarized and said, when the 5 koshas are negated, that which remains, what is that? That witness consciousness which remains, that you are. And that witness consciousness is Swayam Jyotihi, self-luminous. It doesn't require anything else to illumine itself. Panchakosha Vilakshanaha, it is distinct from all the 5 sheets. Avasthatraya Sakshi San, it is the witness of the 3 states. Nirvikaraha, without any modification. Niranjanaha, without any taint. Sadānandaha, savidneyaha, that should be known, which is Sadānandaha, ever blissful, or Satānandaha, which is existence bliss, that should be known. How? Swatmatvena vidneyaha, it should be known as one's own self, not as some object, but as one's own self. It should be known vipaschita, by the wise. Now listening to this, the student got one doubt we saw in the last session. What was the doubt? He says, Eteshu panchasu kosheshu nishiddeshu, when these 5 sheets are negated, mithyātvena, why are you negating them? Because they are not real. Why are they not real? Because they are seen. In all the 5 koshas, when the distinction was made of the self with the kosha, it was said that they are seen. Isn't it? And because drishyatvat was said again and again. So since they are seen, they are unreal. And therefore, when you negate those 5 sheets, sarva abhavam vina kinchinna paśyami atra he guru. O teacher, when all these are removed, what is there? Sarva abhava. Absence of everything alone is there. Other than that absence, I am not seeing anything. Vidneyam kimu vastu asti. Then what is that reality which you are talking, which is to be known swatmana, by oneself, atma vipashyata, by the knower of the self, that vastu, that reality which is to be known? What is that? Why? Because when the 5 sheets are removed, negated, I see nothing. There exists nothing. So what is that reality which you want me to know? Why? Because I don't see anything. Now, the Guru is giving answer, but we have already seen the answer. What is that? Shri Guru Ruvacha, he says, Satyamuktam Tvaya Vidvan. O learned one, you have correctly asked a question. And what you said is absolutely correct. Nipunaha asi vicharani. You are expert in vichara. Why? Because what kind of logic I have explained, you have followed that. And you are asking a question which is leading me to my next topic. Therefore, O student, well done. You are apt, you are perfectly dexterous in vichara, in inquiry. But there is one point. What is that? Ahamadi vikaraha te tadabhavaha ayam api anusarve yena anubhuyante. Just now, through the 5 sheets, we have explained body, gross body, subtle body, causal body. Isn't it? Body, pranas, mind, intellect, karana sharira, all that is explained. All of them, their presence and absence, yena sarve anubhuyante. That by which everything is experienced. Everything is experienced, everything is witnessed. Yaha swayam na anubhuyate. But it itself is not witnessed by anything. Tam atmanam veditaram viddhi. Know that self, who is the witness of all and who is not witnessed by anything. So that ultimate witness, know it. How? Not as something else, not knowing as some object. Swatmanam veditaram. Know the knower. And the knower cannot be known as object. So what? Being the knower, know the knower. And how to be the knower? Buddhya susukshmaya. Using extremely subtle intellect. Know that. Now, while explaining this in the last session, we saw a very interesting concept of sakshi. Yeah, remember? We saw 3 pairs of seer and seen. Objects are seen by the senses. So objects are drishya, senses are drik. But whether the senses are working properly or not, what is the condition of them, that is seen by the mind. And therefore senses are drishya, mind is the drik. But the thoughts of mind, condition of the mind, state of mind is also seen by someone. First we called it as X, then we gave it as name Sakshi, Sakshatikshate, that which experiences directly, witnesses directly, sadhanam vina, without any means. That's called as Sakshi. So then what? Then that mind is the drishya, Sakshi is the drik. Remember? Then we saw in these things, the senses and mind are sometimes drik and sometimes drishya. So we gave them name sopadhika drik. Correct? Conditionally they are seers. So they are not ultimate seer, they are conditional. Objects are always seen and therefore they are nirupadhika drishya, always seen. And the sakshi is what? Nirupadhika drik. Always the seer. It is never seen. It is the ultimate seer, ultimate knower, ultimate witness. That Sakshi Chaitanya you want to call it, know that to be yourself. That's the instruction. So when the 5 sheets are removed, there remains nothing to experience, correct? But there remains the experiencer, the witness of the presence and absence of all the upadhis. That witness still remains. Remember the example. There are 5 tables in a room. One by one you removed 5 tables. Now what? Now there is no table. Correct. but the one who knows that there is no table is still there. That is still there. That is the knower. That is the self which is to be known. When the 5 sheets are negated, we can't say that there is nothing. There is nothing of the world, correct. There is nothing of the object, correct. But the subject is still there, who is witnessing their absence also. Remember Natakadipa? That also we saw last session. It is like that. When on the stage different actors are there, it illumines their presence. When all of them go off, it illumines their absence. You can say there is nothing on stage, but there is the light which is illumining that there is nothing on stage. That light is the light of consciousness, and that is what is to be known as that is what is equated with the self. Right? Now what? Now he said, but this cannot be known just like that. For that, buddhi has to become susukshma, extremely subtle. So we saw there are 3 kinds of good intellects: tikshna buddhi, shuddha buddhi, sukshma buddhi. Tikshna buddhi, sharp intellect, which is generally used for finding out things in the world, which is better color, which is better bank to invest money, which is better place to, purchase house. For that also sharp intellect is required. In each field, sharp intellect is required. In cricket, sharp intellect is required. In music field, sharp intellect is required. In politics, sharp intellect is required. Right? So there is one kind of good intellect. Second is called as shuddha buddhi. Shuddha buddhi means pure intellect. Means what? They don't know crooked ways, etc. They live a simple, righteous life, and that's what they understand. And their intellect is very, very keen on following the correct path. So they may go in so-called loss in the world, that they are not very wealthy, possible, but it is pure intellect. And then we saw the third kind of intellect, which is sukshma buddhi. Sukshma buddhi means subtle intellect, which is able to understand and differentiate the self from the not self. So for this kind of spiritual journey, sukshma buddhi is required. And along with sukshma buddhi, if there is tikshna buddhi, it is even better. Drishyate tu agreya buddhya sukshmaya sukshmadarshibhi. So sukshmaya buddhya, agreya buddhya. Sharp, but which sharp intellect? That intellect which is subtle is sharp. So subtlety is the basic requirement. Sharpness is additional requirement. Right? So with that, developing that kind of intellect, know the knower. Know the knower means understand your oneness with that knower, capital K. Correct? We have seen. Then what? Shankaracharya says one more thing. What is that one more thing? Tat sakshikam bhavet tattat yadyat yena anubhuyate kasyapi ananubhutarthe sakshitvam na upayujyate. Just now we have proved that the self is the ultimate witness. Now Shankaracharya says he is not even the witness. Why? Because the concept of witness is only with respect to something that is witnessed. If there is nothing to witness, the witness cannot be called as witness. And since everything that is witnessed is seen, it is unreal, it is not there, and therefore there is nothing to witness, and therefore the self cannot be even called as witness. So witness is also a name given to self with respect to the witnessed objects. When those witness objects are not in the picture, talking from its own standpoint, it is not even the witness. This also point we discussed in the last session. Right? Then what? one more point. What is that? Asau swasakshikah bhavaha yatah svena anubhuyate atah param swayam sakshat pratyagatma nachaitaraha. He says, this witness principle which we are talking about witnesses everything else, and it is also witness for itself. Means what? There is no other witness for it. There is nothing which is seeing the self, just as the self is seeing everything. The self knows everything. The self witnesses everything. Right? But nothing is seeing the self. Nothing is witnessing or knowing the self. Right? And therefore, this self is supreme. Ataha param. It is supreme. Swayam sakshat. It itself is self-luminous. Swayam jyotihi. It doesn't require any other entity to know it. Right? Nachaitaraha. There is nothing higher than it. So, when the 5 sheets are negated, you are right that nothing of the world remains, but the witness remains. Witness of what? Witness of their presence and their absence. That witness is only called witness with respect to something that is witnessed. From its own standpoint, it is not even the witness. And that witness doesn't need anything else to witness it. Therefore, it is the ultimate, the most supreme. Clear? So that self, know as oneself. That supreme witness, know it to be the self. How? By making your intellect extremely subtle. Extremely subtle means what? Where the intellect merges in that self. That is called extremely subtle. By doing that, know the knower. Know the knower, understand your oneness with the knower. Okay? Good. Now, the same concept is explained in a very beautiful verse, 217, 217. Let us read. Jāgratsvapnasuṣuptiṣu sphuṭataraṃ yosau samujjṛmbhate pratyagrūpatayā sadāhamahamityantaḥ sphurannaikadhā nānākāravikārabhāgina imān paśyannahaṃdhīmukhān nityānandacidātmanā sphuratitam viddhi svametaṃ hṛdi. jāgratsvapnasuṣuptiṣu sphuṭataraṃ yosau samujjṛmbhate pratyagrūpatayā sadāhamahamityantaḥ sphurannaikadhā nānākāravikārabhāgina imān paśyannahaṃdhīmukhān nityānandacidātmanā sphuratitam viddhi svametaṃ hṛdi. Jagrat swapna sushuptishu, sushuptishu, saptami bhakti. In the waking, dream and deep sleep states, sphuṭataraṃ, clearly, yaha asau samujjṛmbhate, that which is manifesting well, that which manifests well in all the 3 states. Pratyagrūpatayā, not as something outside in the state, but as something core to us. Pratyak, inner to us. Pratyagrūpatayā, as the inner self. How? Sada, always. aham, aham iti antasphuran. Aham iti, as I, antasphuran, shining within, ekadha, without change, without changing. Not ekada, tathā, ekada means once. Ekadha, tathā, ekadha means of one nature, without changing. So that which manifests in all the three states as the inner self, shining inside as I, always, without changing. nānākāravikārabhāgina imān. Imān means these. What are these? Nana, different, various, akara, forms, vikara, modifications, bhajinaha, having. All these having various shapes or forms or modifications. What are they? Ahamdhīmukhān. Aham, ego, ahankara, dhi, intellect, mukhan, etc. So all the upadhis, ahankara, intellect, mind, senses, pranas, body, all of them paśyan, witnessing, seeing all of them, nityānandacidātmanā sphurati. It shines as nitya. Sat, nitya means eternal, eternal means sat, existence. Ananda, bliss. Chit, consciousness. Atmana, self. It shines as the self which is of the nature of existence, consciousness, bliss. Tam viddhi. You know that. What is that? Swam. It is one's own self. Etam, this. Hṛdi, in your own heart. So what is said here? In the three states of consciousness, that is the waking, dream and deep sleep state, different upadhis come about, take different forms, go through various modifications and go out also. They exist for some time, they disappear for some more time. They appear, again they disappear. Through all these drama, that which is continuously manifesting within us as that I. This is not aham vritti I. This is not the I thought. This is not ahankara. Why? Ekadha. Because this I does not change. Whereas that I keeps changing with every thought. When that aham vritti, ahankara, identifies with the body, I say I am a man. When it identifies with the pranas, I say I am tired. When that ahankara modifies with mind, I say I am angry. When that ahankara I thought identifies with intellect, I say I am not understanding. And when that ahankara identifies with the causal body, I say I am sleeping. I know nothing. We are not talking about this I thought which changes. We are talking about that I which does not change. Aham iti antasphuran ekadha, which is unchanging. Antasphuran means shining within. Shining within means what? This I, this capital I, it's not small I. Not ahankara, not jiva. This is the self which keeps on making its presence felt, though we don't feel the presence, but it is making it feel. How? Through every single moment it says I am there, I am there, I am there. Now that I we misunderstand to be jiva and we consider ourselves to be body, mind, intellect, correct. But that I actually is always there, antasphuran, shining within. Right? That aham sphurana is always there. It's not aham vritti, it is aham spurana. When the mind is there, it is there. When the mind is not there in deep sleep, still it is there. It is the witness of everything and nothing is witnessing it. Even the aham vritti is witnessed by this aham spurana. Not as some object. Why? Because it doesn't know, nothing exists for itself, but it knows everything. Why? Because it is the substratum of everything. This aham, which is present in us, which witnesses all the different modifications of all the upadhis and even their absence, that I am. We have to know that. Tam viddhi, know that. Not as that means something far, etam, as something close. Swam, it is oneself, it is not even close. So you see how beautifully Shankaracharya is using the word tam, swam, etam. All three are used as synonyms here. You see, synonyms means samanadikaranya is there. Tam is that, etam is this, swam means me. He says that is this me. Means what? It is not that, it is not this, it is me. Why? Because that is for something which is far and different from me. This is something which is close but different from me. Swam means it is me. This verse very much resembles in the beginning with one verse from Manisha Panchakam. It starts also like that. jāgratsvapnasuṣuptiṣu sphuṭataraṃ ya vidrujṛmbhate ya brahmādi pipīlikantatanushu prota jagatsakshiṇī saivāham na ca drishyavastu iti dridha pratñāpi yasyāsti chet chandalostu satudvijostu guruhu ityesha manisha maha jāgratsvapnasuṣuptiṣu sphuṭataraṃ ya vidrujṛmbhate. See, the first line is almost similar. jāgratsvapnasuṣuptiṣu sphuṭataraṃ ya samujjṛmbhate. There samvit is consciousness. That is the karta. Therefore, ya samvit. It is a strilinga. Samvit is in strilinga. So ya samvit sphuṭatara. But here it is sphuṭataraṃ. Why? Same asau. That which is clearly present. Samujjṛmbhate, which manifests well in all the three states. Pratyagrūpatayā, as the inner self. Sadāhamahamityantaḥ iti sphurannaikadhā. That which is continuously manifesting, shining inwardly as I, ekadha, without changing. nānākāravikārabhāgina imān ahaṃdhīmukhān paśyan, witnessing all the upadhis, their various forms, modifications, and even their absence. nityānandacidātmanā sphurati. It shines as the self of the nature of existence, consciousness, bliss, nitya chit ananda. Tam viddhi svametaṃ hṛdi. Know that to be your own self in your own heart. Very beautiful verse. So again the point is what? The self is the witness of the five sheaths, and therefore when the five sheaths are negated, the witness remains. So don't say that nothing remains. Nothing of the witnessed remains, but the witness remains. Right? That we must know. Now, next two verses are brilliant. All verses are brilliant, but next two verses are very special because now Shankaracharya says, you see this I which I am talking about, fools misunderstand it to be the jiva, whereas the intelligent one understands it is the self. So in the next two verses, and he explains it through a very, very famous example and very famous theory in Advaita Vedanta, which is called Pratibimbavada, the theory of reflection. So that theory of reflection is explained now in the next two verses. We'll go one by one. So verse number 218. ghaṭodake bimbitamarkabimbam ālokya mūḍho ravimeva manyate tathā cidābhāsamupādhisaṃsthaṃ bhrāntyāhamityeva jaḍo'bhimanyate ghaṭodake bimbitamarkabimbam ālokya mūḍho ravimeva manyate tathā cidābhāsamupādhisaṃsthaṃ bhrāntyāhamityeva jaḍo'bhimanyate. What is that? Let us see. Ghata. Ghata means pot. Udake. Ghata udake. In the water of the pot. Means in the pot there is water. Now inside that water, bimbitamarkabimbam, there is a reflection of sun. Arka means sun. Bimbitam reflected. Arkabimbam reflected sun. So what is said here? In the water of a jar or a pot, the sun is reflected. Ālokya, seeing this reflection of sun in the jar of water or in the water of the jar, mūḍha, a fool, ravimeva manyate, considers that itself as the sun. Ravi means another name for sun. So Arka and Ravi means same only. So seeing the reflection of sun in the water of a jar or a pot, a fool considers that reflection to be the actual sun. Tathā, in the same way, cidābhāsamupādhisaṃsthaṃ aham iti jaḍo'bhimanyate. In the same way, jaḍah, inert. Inert means an unintelligent person. Upādhisaṃsthaṃ cidābhāsam. Cidābhāsam. Chit means consciousness. Chit abhasa, reflection of consciousness. Where it is upādhisaṃsthaṃ. In the upādhi, in the subtle upādhi, in the vritti we have seen. So, jada, an unintelligent person, seeing the reflected consciousness in the upadhis, aham iti eva manyate. Abhimanyate. Aham iti eva abhimanyate. Considers that reflection of consciousness alone to be oneself. Why? Bhrāntya. See, there is a word in between. Tathā cidābhāsamupādhisaṃsthaṃ bhrāntyāhamityeva jaḍo'bhimanyate. So bhrāntya means because of delusion, out of delusion, due to delusion, what a person considers oneself to be the reflection of consciousness. Now this is called as pratibimbavāda. What is pratibimbavāda? Let us understand. The pot is like the gross body. Suppose there is only pot, there is no water inside the pot. Then the sun will not get reflected. Correct? So if there is only gross body, no subtle body, water is equal to subtle body, likened to, compared with subtle body. So pot is compared with gross body, water in that pot is compared with subtle body. Now when there is pot and there is water in that, then the sun gets reflected. Correct? Same way, when there is a gross body and subtle body in it, then the consciousness gets reflected. In the stone, consciousness is not getting reflected. Consciousness is present as the existence, but it is not getting reflected. Why? Because there is no subtle instrument. That's why we call those objects as inert objects. What do you mean by inert objects? Actually everything is inert, even the gross body is inert. but it appears to be sentient. Why? Because there is subtle instrument, and therefore the consciousness gets reflected and it gives apparent sentiency to the body. So I say I am sentient, but the watch is inert. What is the difference between me and watch? I have subtle body in me, and therefore consciousness is getting reflected, and therefore it is getting sentiency. Borrowed sentiency, fine, but it is getting it. The watch doesn't get it because there is no subtle body in it. Are you understanding? So sun is compared with consciousness. Pot is compared with gross body. Water in the pot is compared with subtle body. Now in that water the sun gets reflected. That reflected sun is different from the actual sun. It appears to be like the sun, right? But it is different. Now imagine if there are 100 pots filled with water, then how many reflections? 100 reflections of the same sun. The sun is one, reflections are 100. Are you getting? Individuals are many, but the self, the consciousness is one. Now what is the problem? The problem is I think I am this individual, and therefore you are another individual. That person is another individual. That is animal, that is bird, that is tree. I don't realize that I am the self, which is like the sun, not the reflected self, the ego. Mūḍha, a fool, considers that reflected sun to be the actual sun. In the same way, jaḍa, an unintelligent, ignorant person, bhrāntyā, due to delusion, considers that reflected consciousness to be the self. Reflected consciousness is the jiva, right? Considers itself to be the self. Then what? Next verse, let us see. ghaṭaṃ jalaṃ tadh-ghaṭaṃ vihāya sarvam vinirīkṣyate'rkaḥ tatastha etat tritayāvabhāsakaḥ svayam prakāśo viduṣā yathā tathā. ghaṭaṃ jalaṃ tadh-ghaṭaṃ vihāya sarvam vinirīkṣyate'rkaḥ tatastha etat tritayāvabhāsakaḥ svayam prakāśo viduṣā yathā tathā. Now what happens? The person from that ignorance, delusion slowly starts to come out. What does he do? ghaṭaṃ jalaṃ tadh-ghaṭaṃ sarvam vihāya. He understands that the sun is different from the pot, water and the reflection of sun. And therefore, giving up the pot, giving up the water, giving up the reflection of sun, sarvam vihāya, arkaḥ vinirīkṣyate. The person sees the sun. Giving up the pot, water and the reflected sun, now the person sees the sun. Yathā, tathā, in the same way. What? In the same way what? Giving up the gross body, subtle body, causal body, reflection of consciousness in the upadhi, giving up all that, the person realizes oneself to be the self. Tatastha, who is how? Tatastha. Beautiful word. Tate tishtati iti tatastha. Tatastha means in the law language, lawyers language, no? They say tatastha. Tatastha means the person who is not involved into anything. Uninvolved. Why? Because he is standing on tata. He is not inside the water. He is standing on the bank. Why? There are some people, who don't want to commit to any side. So they will speak always from both sides. India-Pakistan match is going on. They will say, India will win, but Pakistan can also win. India is a strong team, but Pakistan is also not bad. So then what? Then whatever happens at the end, they say, see, I told you. Whether India wins, they will say, see, I told you, India is a strong team. Pakistan wins, see, I told you, Pakistan is also not bad. Means what? They don't want to commit to anything. They remain apart from the whole thing. The Sakshi Chaitanya, the self is actually tatastha. Means what? You see, in the whole business, the sun has nothing to do with all that. You keep 100 pots, you keep 1,000 pots. You keep gold pots, mud pots, silver pots, copper pots. Water will be pure, impure, therefore reflection will be pure, impure, unsteady, steady, clear reflection, unclear reflection. One pot is broken, therefore water is leaking. The sun doesn't concern with anything. He is not concerned with anything. It is actually tatastha. It has nothing to do with it. Also, etat tritaya avabhasakaha. It is the one which is illumining these three. What is these three? Ghata, jala and bimbitamarkabimbam. It illumines the pot, it illumines the water, and it also illumines the reflection of sun in the water. See, there is a pot, inside there is a water and sun is getting reflected in the water, correct? But you are able to see the pot, isn't it? In whose light? In the light of same sun. The water is seen. How? In the light of same sun. Inside that water there is a reflection seen in the light of same sun. Now please, immediately when that sun is covered with the clouds, totally covered, you can't see the pot, you can't see the water, you can't see the reflection. So it is tatastha. It has nothing to do with all these things. It is uninvolved. At the same time, it is the one which is illumining everything. Etat tritaya avabhasakaha. And also swayam prakashaha. It is self-luminous. In the same way, vidusha, by an intelligent person. The earlier one was who? One who was mūḍho or jaḍa. Now vidush. Vidusha means what? By an intelligent person, what happens? That person gives up. Gives up means what? Stops focusing on the pot, on the water and on the reflected sun, and focuses on the actual sun. In the same way, now using this example, taking it to our actual concept, what is that? The self is getting reflected into subtle body which is in gross body. Now taking our mind away from gross body, subtle body and reflection of consciousness in that subtle body, an intelligent person focuses on the self. Who is how? Tatastha, uninvolved. Etat tritaya avabhasakaha. It is in the light of this consciousness that we experience the gross body, subtle body and even the reflection of consciousness. If that consciousness is not there, the body cannot exist, the subtle body cannot exist, the reflection cannot exist. And it cannot exist, it cannot be experienced also. So these three are illumined by the self, but still the self is uninvolved and it is self-luminous. Self doesn't require another entity to lend its consciousness. Self by itself has consciousness. Understanding? So what is the point said here? A fool misunderstands the reflected sun to be the sun. And an intelligent person understands the actual sun. How? By giving up pot, water and reflection of sun. In the same way, an ignorant person considers the reflection of consciousness in the subtle body, which is called as ahankara or jiva. That ignorant person considers oneself to be that jiva. And therefore what? Therefore all other jivas are different from me. I am this body, mind, intellect and the conglomeration of all that, and therefore all other people are different from me, and therefore this person is giving me joy, I like this person. This person is giving me sorrow, I hate this person. This situation is good, I want to be in it. This situation is bad, I don't want to be in it. This object is giving me joy, I love it. This object is giving me sorrow, I hate it. From where all these things are coming? From considering oneself to be jiva. If you consider the reflection of sun to be the actual sun, then there are 1,000 suns. But when you realize that all these thousands are only reflection, the actual sun is one, which is uninvolved, unchanging, illuminator of everything and self-luminous. An ignorant person considers oneself to be jiva and suffers. An intelligent person understands that I am not this jiva, I am not the subtle body in which jiva is getting reflected, self is getting reflected. I am not the gross body which is the house for the subtle body. I am the self which is uninvolved, illuminator, self-luminous. That self I am. Clear? So when it was said that when the 5 sheaths are negated, what will remain? This self will remain. Don't worry. It will not go anywhere. Why? It cannot go anywhere. Why? Because there is nowhere to go for the self. Why? Because the concept of somewhere, everywhere, here, there, such concept doesn't exist. And if at all such concept exists, then the self has already gone everywhere. Where will it go? So don't worry. You will not be with Shunya. You will be with Ananta. When the 5 sheaths are removed, don't worry. Don't worry that nothing is there. Nothing is there, but everything is also there. Why? Because that nothing, who sees? The self. And that self is everything. Therefore, O Shishya, don't worry. So after explaining this, now, next verse we cannot take now because the next 3 verses are in continuation. We have to take them together. Anyways, we will take it in the next session. Now he continues with that concept. See, now ghaṭaṃ, jalaṃ, bimbitamarkabimbam is only example is explained, isn't it? But that example is not yet taken to the main point by Shankaracharya. That he does in the next verse, first line. And then the second line connects with the next few verses. That we will see in the next session. Alright, sufficient for today. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.